Welcome, everybody. This is Introduction to Digital Photography Part 1. I am your host, Derek Fahsbender. This is going to be a 7-part series, so my approach is less techy. Of course, the beginning of the series is going to be a little more technical. I don't like to get caught up in the weeds because I'm self-taught, so I don't like to go too deep into the technical aspect of it. My approach to doing this is not educating. I don't like to say teaching or educating. I like to inspire. I like to motivate. Because everybody has their own style, especially now with the internet. You can find education anywhere. Really, I just want you to be inspired to pick up a camera, go out, and create on your own. So again, 7-part series. If you want to bring your camera to these, for those that just came to the photo walk, I always recommend bringing a camera to these events because you never know when it is going to turn into something where you might want to use the camera and you might want to get some instruction on the settings and whatnot. So shouldn't take up the entire 2 hours today. I don't like to drag things out. We're going to get through the information. I do have my camera, and I brought a tether cable to kind of demonstrate some of the techniques and what we're going to be talking about as far as settings are concerned when it comes to exposure. If you do have your camera and you have any questions after, feel free. That's what we're here for. I don't like to talk at you. I like to engage. So feel free, raise your hand. We can keep it old school like we're in the classroom. Raise your hand if you have a question during anything. You can interrupt the flow. There is no interrupting the flow. That is the flow. I want to engage with you guys. A little bit about me. My name is Derek Fahsbender. You have my website, my Instagram there. I'm a senior producer on the event space team here at B&H. We have Cooper over here, Fred, Danny. We're a small team of creatives. We're passionate about what we do. How many people, this is their first event in the event space? Oh, wow, a lot. Wonderful. There we go. For those of you who don't know about the event space, it's free education. We've been doing this a long time, so much longer than I've been here. I've been with B&H about 6 years, and we used to be up on the second floor. For the past 5 years, post-COVID, we were virtual, and I hosted our YouTubes. Anybody watch our YouTube? Yes? No? Maybe? Some people are sick of seeing me, or they see me in person and they don't know what I look like outside of a Zoom box. Well, here I am. But we are very passionate about what we do, and that is bringing education to the masses for free, where you don't have to pay for it. There's so much information out there on the internet, but we were adamant that we had to get back in person and we had to get back to building this community. And that's really what the event space is about. We want this to be a third space for creatives, a place where you can come and you can meet like-minded people, where you can network, where you can learn and be inspired by your peers. So full disclosure, I am a Fujifilm creator, so I'm sponsored by Fujifilm. So if I do talk, there we go. If you have a Fujifilm, you get extra preference in my class. No. I'm brand agnostic. As Tony Gale says, everybody makes a good camera now. So it doesn't matter which system you're shooting. There's nobody, literally no brand that makes a bad camera right now. And everything that is on the market within the past 15 years is light years ahead of what a lot of us grew up on. And I know there's people looking at me like, what do you mean you grew up on? You're wet behind the ears. I'm older than I look. Every system, we talked about it before, everybody has different preferences for different systems. So it all depends what you want to get out of it and more importantly, what it's used for. So I try not to make it brand heavy. I do throw that out there because I do like full disclosure. But it really isn't about the brand. And as you're going to see in this presentation, it's not about brands at all. It's really going to be talking about just the nuts and bolts of what moves. So I did say this is going to be a 7-part series, so if you want to take a picture of that, or if you haven't grabbed one of the postcards, welcome, welcome. One of the postcards from the table out there. All of these events are now up on the Event Space website, as well as all of our other events that are up on the website. We do a little bit of everything out of here. We do photo walks. We just had a photo walk earlier today. We do live demos, live photo shoots. This Thursday, we have an open studio, which is our new series here with the Event Space, where it's really that creative third space I was talking about a couple moments ago, where you can come in and you can edit. You can come in and just sit in a corner and hang out. It's kind of an open house style where we can teach you to use lighting. We can teach you portraiture. If you need a new headshot, we could do that for you too. Again, we are all professional creatives. Cooper over here is a filmmaker. Say what's up, Cooper. So if you do have any questions on film and all that, video, Cooper can help with that. We are also doing a day-long, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., video for beginners, video for still photographers. If you don't know anything about video and you want to learn, that is going to be the day that you're going to want to come on November 20th. So it'll be Cooper and I hosting that, along with all of this up here. If you are, how many people consider themselves very, very, very early beginner? Okay, so majority, kind of half, maybe a little more majority. Of those that didn't raise your hand, how many people serious hobbyists? They know their way around the camera. Couple hands. Anybody really, really, really sure of themselves they're a professional? All right, that just shows you. And I always like to get a feel for that because I want to know what kind of audience I'm dealing with, but you never know what approach you're going to get. I've taken intro classes and I've learned stuff that I never learned on my way coming up. So I'm self-taught, but you can always learn something new. I'm always a student of the game. I think the reason for my success in photography is because I never get too far ahead of myself. I never think I've arrived. There's always something else that I can learn, always a different approach that I can get. So what are we going to discuss today? Well, it starts with what makes an effective photograph. Now, again, I do want to hear what your thoughts are. I gave you my two things here. I've boiled it down to aesthetics and story. Any other words that pop out to you guys? What makes an effective photograph to you guys? Anybody? It communicates. All right, and I like that. That's a very broad term. Clarity. Okay. Mood. All great things. And the reason why, going back to my approach to educating, and why it's more of inspiration and motivation rather than teaching and education, is because those broad terms, communicating, clarity, mood, they're very broad terms, right? Effective. Effective is a very broad term. What is effective to you might not be effective to you. Notice I didn't say what makes a good photograph, because photography is art. Art is objective, right? It all depends on what your view of it is. So aesthetics, it's pretty clear. If we look at this image on the left here, what is aesthetically pleasing about it? If it is aesthetically pleasing to you, and please don't, I'm not up here to blow smoke up my own behind. If you don't find it aesthetically pleasing, if you find it all over the place and it confuses you, then the composition, the angles, do we see lines, shapes, right? There's light. What is our eye drawn to? Contrast, shapes, leading lines. If this was all lit with flat lighting, what do you lose? This doesn't pop out. You don't have that rim light here. You don't have this light right on that leading line. If this leading line was all lit the same way, is it really a leading line? Does it really draw your eye in? Your eye should be taken through the photograph. And in one of the later parts of this series, we are going to discuss lighting. We're going to discuss composition. So today's part one. A lot of the stuff is going to be surface level. I don't want to throw too much at you. I hope, and my sincerest hope is that you stick through, and if you're able and your schedule allows, to make it to as many of these as you can, because I've really structured it in what helps me. And I wanted to make it something that's in a linear fashion, and we kind of build the pieces out so that by the end of this 7-part series, if you've come to all 7 parts, then you're going to start being able to put the pieces together. On the right, story. I tried to pick a photo that the story is kind of right there. You don't need any background. What's the story here? She's collecting, and I don't know whether she's homeless or not, but she's collecting bottles. And I mean, that's the story for me. She was tiny. She was about this tall. And to see her pushing bottles, there it is. We got my boy Glenn out there. To see her pushing a stack of bags tied with ropes that high is a story. It's impressive. It draws you in. Did anybody look at either of these two images, be completely honest, and not feel something on either one of these images? Anybody? You didn't feel anything when looking at these?
I didn't know what that was. It looked like packages bundled up on a car, and that's it. So I didn't know what. I still don't see a word.
Here? Okay. And again, there's no right or wrong. Now you see it, yeah. So it kind of does blend. We're working. It's sometimes hard to on the screens here, and we got the lights going and everything, and it's farther away, um, and that's okay. That if everybody, and again, it's going back to the previous slide of, or what we're talking about here with the idea of being effective. Effective means something different to everybody, and you should, when you take an image, ask yourself, did I feel something? Did I hit my objective? Is this effective? Did I do a great? Come on, Jay. You know you can walk in. He's been trying to track me down all day, and now he's afraid to walk in during the middle of this. I didn't answer his message. He's mad at me. So we talked about aesthetics and story. So throw it out. Aesthetic, story, aesthetics. What's aesthetic about it? The shape, the light. Do we know where this is? New York people should know where this is. The Oculus. And what I liked about this image is, see how that light's cutting through? I have so many images of the Oculus where it's just, I blew it out to white, or it's all white and it's all evenly lit, and it's, for those that haven't been there, it looks like the inside of, like, you're in, what is it, Pinocchio, where he's inside a whale, and you got like the whale bone, and it's all white. So you have to have the certain time of day where the light comes through and you're able to get, this is not done in post. It was lit. Obviously, I underexposed it to get to the point because I didn't want to blow this out here. So it was done for effect. It was done intentionally. But yes, aesthetics. What about here? Story. Is there some, and it can be both, right? Images, the idea ultimately is you do want to tell a story. You do want to have some kind of, you don't want to just have a random, I think that's one of the worst things about the social media generation of feeding into likes and comments is people will post something that means absolutely nothing just because it looks cool. And 30 years from now, what does that do for you? You look back in something and you're like, all right, wow, it got 500,000 likes, but it means nothing to me. It was just a cool looking image. What's the story here? Yeah, the shopping carts. When do you ever see, and he had them all roped together, pushing them along. Of course, the background, 167th Street, South Bronx. The background is critical. Yes, background is, I tell people all the time, and I think I said it on the photo walk earlier today, a lot of times people pay too much attention to what's in focus and not enough attention to what's not in focus. Now here, everything's in focus. We're going to get there to, how talking about focus. But the focus is clearly right here, okay? But if I don't pay any attention to how I'm framing the shot, you lose the focus of the image. It's not too busy. Is this something that makes you, so for me, I feel this image. This is an image that makes me feel warm and cold at the same time. This is like, I look at this and I'm like, I immediately think ramen, because that's what I love to eat on a snowy day. Downtown, nobody's there. New Yorker on their way home, right? Snowstorm, no cars in the streets. It's hazy. You got the lights cutting across. You got the leading lines. The angle draws you in, she says. Now, if I take that out, is this image as strong? You need an anchor, right? You need something in your image. So for those of you who are taking notes, write down anchor. And for some people, yes, the leading lines, it's more of a traditional. And the other one, when it's all over the place, people like me who their brain signals are all crossed up, I like to call it organized confusion. So everybody has their own idea of what is aesthetically pleasing or what all makes everything make sense.
Oh, aesthetics.
Aesthetics. Now there is a great story here. I had to risk my life. I couldn't get over the fence that was blocking the area that I needed to take this picture, and the fence went right up to the edge of the cliff. So I had to hold on to the fence and koala bear it around the edge of the fence and hope that I didn't, or get like caught on something. I downloaded these off of, no, I'm joking. Yes, these are all my images. Thank you. So this is in Big Sur. If you haven't taken it, it is one of the most beautiful drives in the country. I wanted to get there for sunset. They have this waterfall here. What else? What else draws you? When we say aesthetic, what is aesthetically pleasing about it? It's not centered, framing, using negative space. What is the main element in this photo, do you think? As far as from a general standpoint, is it the framing? Is it shapes? Is it colors? Colors. There we go. Colors. Is that a pleasing palette? It's vibrant, but yet soft. It's not too much. When I take images, and again, we'll dive more into this when we go over composition at a later time, not today, but I do a whole section on composition and framing and all that. I'm paying attention to everything in the frame. This is by design. It's not by accident. I needed something because otherwise it just kind of melts away. It's a frame within a frame, and it's not much, but it's enough. It's intentional. I am very, very, very particular about what goes in and out of a frame. As much as I hate this here, also it's like I don't like to get too deep into the Photoshop, but I do like to pay attention. Story. Capital One. Homeless person. This is and the pigeon over there, I love pigeons. It's isolation. I have another frame and it's a bunch of people walking by and no one's paying attention, and it's more of a commentary on, and these, I go into this, I've lectured on street photography extensively, and it's always a hotbed of conversation over photographing the homeless, but we have to document the times we live in. And when you aren't going to lengths to demoralize people or exploit people, we're capturing, I would capture this the same way that I would go and capture somebody who's, has beautiful style, and I shot them for the fashion sense. Story. Is anybody drawn to this image? Is this powerful? Okay. You guys can't really see. Does anybody know what that, anyone's Italian, native Italian speakers? Know what that, omerta. So omerta is basically, it's like you don't snitch. It's like, so it's got the $sign. I took the wrong train. I fell asleep on the train. Number one no-no in New York. Woke up, thought I got on the 4, didn't realize that the 2 had stopped where the 4 was. Next thing I know, I'm in the projects in the South Bronx. I gotta get off the train to go back around. There's a bodega there. I'm like, let me grab a water. There's a bunch of dudes hanging out inside the bodega. It's too late to put my camera away. You just gotta act like you've been there. And I'm in line, and the guy's like, yo, take a picture of me. So I turn around, it's his friend. Took a picture of him and the other dude sitting on the ice cream freezer. Go outside, they're like, yo, twin, come here. He's taking pictures. So I take a picture of him. One of my favorite portraits I've ever taken. These guys were super cool. So a lot of times I do photograph in black and white. Again, we'll get into that. That's another topic that I really dive into when I talk about color and black and white and those decisions. I haven't done infrared. One day. I do have to try that. But that's a combination of story and aesthetics. So I'll just pass through these next 2 quick. I took this while I was down working on an emergency crew for the hurricane in North Carolina. I think in 2017 it was. And this was one of the guys who I was assisting. And when I pulled up to the property, he was sitting on this chair back here, and he had like a little sander, and he was working on his car. So down in the South, they have donks. So the donks, if you ever see the cars that have the biggest, like 25, 30-inch rims on it, looks like they're driving on pizza trays. So he was working on a donk. I was talking to him, super cool. I was like, do you mind if I take your portrait? So this was shot on 35 millimeter film, Portra 400. Nice. I love the light. I love the background. And I only brought film. I wanted to travel very light when I was down there because I didn't want to make it about taking photos, but at the same time, I wanted to document what I was going through. So this, for me, another combination of aesthetic and story. And final image here, Cooper and I were working on a project up on his rooftop, and they popped out, and they're like, what are you guys working on? Cool New York moment where you just have to take the photo. Cooper is going to blow smoke and say that this is nicely framed. It doesn't aesthetically do anything for me. If it wasn't a cool moment, but the goal and the intent was the moment. If they didn't pop out and ask what we're working on, and so of course then we had to make them part of the project. So, hey, do you mind if I take a picture? We're screaming out email addresses so we can send them releases and all that. And now we have a story out of it. So now we get to the gear. We kind of got the gears grinding. We're going to talk about gear, cameras, and lenses, okay? So this is the boring part. So if you do have any questions on gear, luckily for you all, I don't like to dive too deep in. Kind of just want to scratch the surface. If you guys do have more questions, and of course I'll be hanging around after if you want to get more in depth. I try to keep this pretty basic. So we basically, when we're talking digital photography, DSLR, mirrorless, bridge and point and shoot, and phone. Is anybody not familiar with any of those terms, just right off the bat? Don't be embarrassed, don't be shy. Bridge. I knew that was going to get some people. Anybody else on bridge? So bridge, we'll get to it. So I knew that was going to be the one that would catch people up. So let's just start where a lot of us know. Who still shoots with a DSLR? 1, 2, 3. DSLR. I never thought I would switch to mirrorless. I was a DSLR for life. I was a holdout, never switching. I love my DSLR. I used them in early mirrorless, and I wasn't a fan of it. But I've since changed. DSLR, optical viewfinder, uses a mirror and prism system for direct optical viewing. So when we say optical, what are we talking about? Optical, you can see it. You can look right through and you can see. Now, what is the major drawback to optical now that we're in a mirrorless age? If I look through my optical viewfinder, what am I seeing? I'm seeing it just how it is. I still have to know my settings. I think mirrorless has kind of made us a little more complacent. We don't know. That's probably why I have to do an intro to photography class more often now, because DSLR, you actually had to know a little bit. Back in the film days, right? If you were a professional photographer in the film days, you had to know what you were doing. Mirrorless makes it super easy now. So you had an optical viewfinder that used a mirror and a prism system, which made it a lot larger. So your DSLRs, a lot of them are heavier. They're more clunky. You do have some APS-C, some smaller sensor DSLR systems that were a little smaller in size, but generally the DSLR body is a lot chunkier. Interchangeable lenses, speaks for itself. Excellent battery life because the optical viewing, you're not using the battery up like we are on the mirrorless systems now. So you generally, with the DSLR systems, there were days when I could do an entire 10-hour shoot and maybe tap 1.5 batteries. You know, I was getting through most of it with a battery. The biggest bullet point here, they're becoming outdated as companies shift their focus to mirrorless systems. A lot of companies are shifting. I think the only company that is still investing in DSLRs, that could be wrong, is Pentax. Every other company has moved on. Canon, Nikon, Sony, obviously, Sony doesn't make DSLRs. Fujifilm doesn't make DSLRs. But Canon and Nikon have stopped production. So of the people who still shoot DSLR, are you thinking about moving to mirrorless? Or maybe it's the future. That is where everything's moving. And that's because mirrorless, it really is. I'm an evangelist for the mirrorless system as somebody who held out as long as possible. The EVF gives you a real-time display. So when I look through, I can even customize my settings. I can customize the contrast. Going back to, do you photograph in black and white or not? I can set to see in black and white. I can even color grade and change the white balance of my image so that I see the image exactly as it's going to look when I take the photo. Now, for those who haven't shot DSLR in a while, you remember the days where you're just like, okay, I can set my settings and I take an image and I see it's a little underexposed, so now I got to change my settings. Well, with the EVF and the mirrorless, I can do it all right then. I look through, or I look at my LCD and I see, okay, it's underexposed, I change my settings, get it right, boom, I take it, and it's exactly like it looked when I was about to take the image, which is a huge bonus for reasons I don't even have to state. Compact build. Without the mirror mechanism, you have a smaller, lighter body. Now, that was the big sell on mirrorless when it first came out, was that it was a more compact system. Then you realize that if I want really good glass, the glass is still going to be heavy. And it's actually a little bit worse when you think weight distribution. If you have a heavy camera body and a heavy lens, even though it's a heavier system, it still feels, the balance feels better than when you have a camera that's that big and then you put a big chungus of a lens on it, and now it's like front heavy and it doesn't feel right. So it's a trade-off, but there are a lot of really, really, really good quality lenses out there from mirrorless systems that are way smaller, way lighter. Who remembers back when a lens, if it wasn't heavy, you thought it was horrible quality? If you had a light lens, right, you picked it up and it was like, nah, this, here, take it. And then that one that like kills your shoulder all day, you're like, no, the pictures are gonna be great. It did used to equate, and now you have Sony actually recently came out with the trio of the smaller lenses that are really great. I have Fujifilm lenses for my X series, a pancake lens that's about that wide, and about that big around, and it slides right in my pocket, super light. Quality is amazing. Faster autofocus. So with the old mirrorless system, you bounce, some of that light would be split off of the mirror, and it goes to a phase detection system. I am not going to dive into phase detection, contrast detection, LiDAR. The Hasselblad X2D uses LiDAR, which apparently you can get 100% accurate autofocus in complete dark room. I'm not a techie person. If you are, more power to you. I wish I could be, I'm just not. But basically, mirrorless systems now, they're experimenting with hybrid autofocus systems. So these hybrid autofocus systems are, a lot of what you'll see is a combination of phase detection, and you're having this right on the sensor, whereas it's not bouncing off a mirror. You don't have a mirror, right? So there's a lot of different things in the mechanics of a mirrorless system. You don't have a mirror, so you can have smaller flanges, and with the flange, as the lens has to attach to the body, that changes things when you don't have to get a whole mirror mechanism in there, which makes it lighter, the ability to have it smaller. With the technology that they have now, faster autofocus, more accurate autofocus. Who has a camera they really are impressed with the autofocus? I'm just curious. Is there anybody that has a camera really, really, really great autofocus? Nobody. You guys don't rely on autofocus like I do? Y'all remember the zone focusing days, right? Using the little, 15 feet, it'll be in focus of a Mat F8. He gets it already. He's like, yeah, I remember that. I don't want to go back to that. Autofocusing is much faster now. Advanced video capabilities. How many people shoot video? No? All right. I better see all of you guys at November 20th then. Your phone. All right, I still do the camcorder too. I got the Sony Handycam, the Digital 8. Got to bring it, it's back in style now. Oh yeah, that's a big thing now. But the video capabilities, everything is moving towards a hybrid approach. I can't tell you the number of jobs that I have been on that I have to be able to do video. Luckily, I got a filmmaker that I'm super good friends with. Hey, what's going on? Come on in. But for those of you who do professional work, you will see that it's a hybrid world that we're living in now. You have to know some kind of video. The video that actually changed the game for having video on cameras was actually a DSLR, it's the Canon 5D Mark II. If anybody had that camera, that was the moment where it's like, wow, we could do video on cameras. And now you're getting to the point where you have mirrorless cameras that are designed primarily for video. A lot of the Fujifilm systems are now dedicated to video photographers rather than still photographers, because it requires a lot more, it's a much more demanding setup for video than it is for stills. Stills is easy. If it does great video, it's going to do great stills. The ability to pair with apps for instant access. Everything now is about accessibility. So a mirrorless system is going to be a lot more accessible. You're going to be able to pair it to your phone. You're going to be able to download your images instantly.
Do you have to buy something? How do you get the photos from your phone to your laptop?
From your phone, the photos from your...
I mean from your camera.
From your camera to your laptop. So on the mirrorless systems, a lot of phones now have, camera systems now have apps where I can send images, even medium format, 102 megapixel camera, and I can transfer it right to, and I can shoot it where it automatically goes right to my phone. It all depends on the manufacturer.
I just got a Canon R100.
Okay, so every manufacturer now has an app where you can transfer.
So you go on the Canon.
So you would check their website and look for what their app is, and no, if you have a mirrorless now, gone are the days of using I still use an SD card reader just because it's quick, but I do, if I'm out taking photos in the street and I want to transfer the images onto my camera on the train, I'm not pulling out I'm not carrying a laptop, I'm not carrying an SD card reader, I'm transferring it right to my phone. Yeah, same thing. So it's the same as, I'm just transferring it to my phone, but you're doing it wirelessly. It's, nope. And that's one of the great things about mirrorless. Now, bridge and point and shoot. So a bridge camera, you guys ever heard of a super zoom? They kind of look like a baby DSLR. You ever see those cameras? It looks like it's a DSLR, but it's not. It usually zooms from like 15 millimeters up to like 400. That's what a bridge camera is. So it's a bridge between point and shoot. So they call them either bridge or a super zoom is another term they use for it. It's a chunkier point and shoot. Now, when I say point and shoot, you'll see right down here, today's point and shoot is not yesterday's point and shoot. If your camera has scene modes, like the little picture of the beach, the picture of fireworks, all that, that's your bridge and point and shoot. So bridge is just a type of point and shoot. The Canon SX, whatever they're on now, exactly. So they're fixed lenses, they're not interchangeable. A lot of them do have a broad zoom range. The sensors are smaller, so it limits the low light performance. And as we'll go in when we talk about sensor size, when you have a smaller sensor, it doesn't handle that depth of field. So it's going to have a richer depth of field. A lot of them have simplified controls. That's where you see your scene modes. For somebody who wants an easy camera, that's what I give to everybody that I mentor and that I train. I get them as easy a camera as possible because a lot of the point and shoots now do have manual control. So a lot of the bridge cameras are actually super zooms. So a lot of the bridge cameras will have a better zoom than the lenses, the interchangeable lenses that we have on our mirrorless systems. Because you'll see like there's, the Canon SX, it's like you'll get from like 15 millimeters all the way up to like 400 millimeters. So you can cover that whole range. Great vacation cameras, great cameras for learning. A lot of the bridge cameras will also have full manual control. So now you can fully control, you can learn how to do everything that we're going to get to a little later on. You can learn how to do that and still have full functionality, an easy setup. You can change it to a scene mode, you can change it to auto mode. These cameras are made to be easy. They're great to learn on. They're not going to give you the quality that you'll get out of a mirrorless setup or a DSLR setup. That's not what they're intended for. And you'll see compact, lightweight. Again, point and shoot is a very loaded term. Fujifilm X100, so I have X105, X106. It's technically a point and shoot, but it's not the same as like a Ricoh GR that's much smaller. Sony RX100, much smaller. But these are cameras that are made to be on the go. Compact, easy to use. The phone. We all love the phone. I hate the phone. I'll keep it a buck, though. I'm a hater. I just hate the phone camera because I can't use it that good. I see people doing things like I'll be on set, and I'll see like the stylist taking a picture with the phone. And like, in my head, I'm like, wow, that looks better than the picture I'm about to take on an $8,000 camera. They should just hire the stylist. They know what they're doing better than me, especially when you're using continuous lighting. Photography is all about lighting. We all have them. Everybody, does anybody in here not have, although this is B&H, you go up in the offices, you'll see flip phones all day. So, yeah. Does anybody here still use a flip phone? Not have a phone on their camera on their phone? All right. We all have them. So the best camera is the one that's always with you, right? The cliche saying. The phones use computational photography. So what is computational photography? We know what that is? You know, we know optical zoom. You ever hear optical zoom and digital zoom going back to point and shoots? And that used to be the marketing gimmick that it'd be like 20 times digital zoom. And you look at it and you're like, wow, 20 times zoom. And then you realize that 20 times digital zoom just means it's cropping it down and just completely degrading your image. So it's not really zooming it in. That's what digital zoom is. So if you ever see digital zoom, you want optical zoom. Optical is real, digital is cropping. Similar to computational photography. That word just sounds AI generated. It just sounds like it's not real. It sounds like I'm taking an image and I'm throwing it into a computer system, and that computer system's going to do a bunch of stuff to it that I don't understand and spit out an image on the other side, which is really what it does. Anybody use portrait mode? Portrait mode on their phone now? Do you think that's really a shallow depth of field? No. You ever take a portrait mode picture of somebody and it's like there's a sliver of something behind and that's, you know, in focus and it's not blurry, and or a piece of their face is like out of focus and it's like, how? It's because it's computational photography. It's not an actual optical. What, you know, when we get into the sensor sizes, that's what leads into the depth of field. So computational photography, fixed lenses, because now phones have like 6,000 lenses on them. I go for the cheap one. I don't have the one that has like 4 different lenses on it. But they're fixed lenses, and you can buy the ones that attach onto there, but inherently they are fixed lens systems. And again, like the mirrorless cameras, what is the best part about the phone camera? It's always on you. I don't have to do anything. I'm conducting my slideshow right now from my phone, and I can, boom, easily pull a camera up and take a picture of somebody. So the ease of use, the accessibility is really what drives the phone cameras. All right, you got to remind me your name one more time. Aite. Aite. Come up here, Aite. I'm not gonna make you sit back there so you can't really see. I'm gonna let you get as close as you want to get. So we talked about DSLR, mirrorless, point and shoot, and phone. What do you think? One is a DSLR, one's a mirrorless, one's a point and shoot, one's a phone. Audience, don't help him out. DSLR. Yeah. Point and shoot, mirrorless, and phone. Mirrorless. Let's say here. Okay, so DSLR, mirrorless. So now we have point and shoot and phone. Point and shoot and phone. All right. He got 2 right, 2 wrong. Which two did he get right?
The one in the upper left is a point and shoot. No, that's
Phone? Phone? Damn, you guys are giving me a lot of credit. Thank you. You think I'm that good with a phone? All right. That's a mirrorless. So that was shot on a Leica SL2S. Phone. Trusty old iPhone 14. Now, for those that know me, they would know that that's my son with his telephoto camera, and you would have been able to cheat and know that, all right, you must have taken that on your phone because your son's got the camera, you probably just had your phone right there. DSLR. And my 8-year-old son took that on a little underwater point and shoot camera. So, Aite, good job. Hey, 50%, I'll take it. It's not easy. That's the point. The point is that you're not supposed to be able to really I've obviously picked images that we're going to, because what do all these images have? What's something that they all have? A characteristic.
They're not large images.
I mean, they're not large. They're not that because we had to fit 4 in a frame, but as far as what's in the image. Now, when we talk about technical things, what is something that they all have? I'll guide you in the right direction. How is the depth of field on all 4 of these images? Is it a shallow depth of field, or is it a rich depth of field, a deep depth of field? It's a deep depth of field, right? So what does that show you? Someone right now is like, man, I just spent $6,000 on a camera, and this guy's telling me that if I just put it at f8, I could have just used my phone. Phones are great now. Point and shoot camera with good light and a great scene looks great. Ooh. It's all rich depth of field, right? The technical stuff, the gear matters, but it doesn't matter, but it matters. Depends on the day, depends on the situation. What is the main focus here? Is it about what's the content, right? It goes back to that initial slide of whether something is an effective photograph. Were we talking about camera types when we were talking about an effective photograph? No. Which is the most effective photograph here? Lower left, all right. Anybody else? Lower left? Top left? My people. Whoever says top left, raise your hand. All right, top left, raise your hand. All right, all y'all, we're going for drinks after. You guys are my tribe. Top right. You're just trying to get, damn, you guys just shaded my son like that. That's an 8-year-old took that. Have some respect. Throw some respect on his name. Nobody. Bottom left. All right. Yeah, there you go. I like that one. And this one, arguably, if we would have seen that full size, might change. A lot of it depends on how much detail is in it. Can you really, we look at pictures on this and it kills me that pictures with detail, we're looking on a screen this big. Bottom right. Now you guys are just trying to kiss up to my son. I see what's going on here. So the other part of the gear equation is lenses. How many people are completely confused what's going on this screen right now? Thank you for your honesty. I'm going to explain. So, because I don't like to chat GPT stuff and I don't like to download graphics that are out there, I'd like to give myself the challenge of doing it my own way. Going from 8mm, is 8mm narrow or wide? Wide, there we go. To 24mm, to 35, all the way up, and we're just going to say 300 plus. So over here on the left side is what you consider a wide-angle lens. Again, I'm not going to get into absolutes. I hate dealing in absolutes unless I absolutely have to deal in them. A wide angle is generally around here. That's why it's vague and I didn't draw specific lines. I don't get into that whole like a wide angle stops here. A standard lens is generally in this range. Telephoto is going to be in this range. You have, standard telephoto, you have super telephoto. You can break it up how you want. Again, this is a beginner course. We just kind of want to grasp the concepts. So these are strategically, I didn't just rush this 10 minutes before the workshop began and just didn't know how to straighten things out. It's strategically, everything is in the place it's supposed to be. Wildlife. You're going to want a lens, and again, this is not absolute. This is not hard and fast, black and white. You can shoot wildlife with a 50mm. If I have an antelope standing 10 feet from me, am I going to shoot with a 300mm lens? I would hope not. You're probably going to not even be at the minimum focusing distance. I should have, see, there we go. I just let a portrait walk by. You're going to want a 300 plus in that range. And again, some people shoot at 200, 100. You want a longer lens. Architecture, a lot of times you're going to see architecture down at this end. More distortion. So when we go wide angle, fisheye, you're getting more distortion. You ever look at an image and the wide angle and super wide angle is what really first piqued my curiosity into why do certain images look cool or intrigue me. When we see that really wide-angle photo, there's something about it. What is it? What is it about a really wide-angle photo? Does anybody love that really wide, like fisheye or really wide landscape shot? Yeah. Is it that distortion? The distortion looks cool. It makes things look magnificent. It makes the world look bigger. A naturally deeper depth of field. This is a big, 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 big thing right here. Right? For my note takers, write down wider angle lenses inherently have a deeper depth of field. And remember that for when we have our quiz at the end, because I'm telling you right now, I threw a trick in there. But it's the reverse of that. Now I'm just getting cryptic. If I shoot an image at 24 millimeter, if I shoot an image at 24 millimeters, and I'm at f2.8, that's 1.4. f1.4, do we know f-stops? We're going to get to it, so if you don't know it, fear not. Who knows f-stops? Where's my f? There we go. What's your name? Lucky? My new favorite person. That's a badass name. Lucky. 24 millimeter f1.4, right? I take a photo of the class. What is it going to look like? Explain it to me from clarity to blur. Now, with a 24 millimeter, what is that fall off going to look like? Now, when I say fall off, I mean going from sharp to blurry. On a 24 millimeter lens, the people in the back row, still going to be able to see them pretty well, even at f1.4. Now, if I were to take an 85 millimeter lens and stand back there and take that same photo of everyone at 1.4, whatever you focused on, that's it. So if I focused on the ladies in the front, and probably that second row is going to be half out of focus, and the third row, you're not even going to be able to tell who's there. Okay? So remember that. Naturally deeper depth of field, no matter which aperture you're at. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get to the exposure triangle. Is anybody completely confused right now? Raise your hand if you're completely like, what is this guy talking about right now? That means I'm doing the right thing. If you're really confused, I don't want you guys now. It's confusing, and it takes a lot, and that's why I don't like to get too deep into the technical stuff, because something like this makes it easier. Wider lens, deeper depth of field, even at a smaller aperture. Captures more of a scene. Here, they say humans see at 50 millimeters. They say that is, when you look at 50 millimeters, and to be honest, that's why I hated 50 millimeters for a long time, because distortion on this end makes it look really cool, and then you get down to this end, and it's like, when you ever look at a person and see the background out of focus? No, it's the physics of the camera system. Now, if I were to get straight up on somebody and I really focus and squint my eyes and like, yeah, but it doesn't look as cool as it does in the picture. So we're aided by these kind of camera effects. Where are we not aided by the camera effects? Right in here. What you see is what you get. Life looks boring. You got to come up with the interest. The camera's not going to make it really wide and blown out, and the camera's not going to blow everything out of focus so the person jumps off the background. Once we get down here, more compression. I say compression like this. Compression's a term you'll hear a lot. It's not actually the lenses, longer lenses that compress. Who knows what I mean when I say compression? You guys, does anybody not know what compression is? Or this idea of compression? You ever see a picture, and perfect example, who's seen those really cool pictures where the moon looks like it's half the size of the city and it's right behind a giant building? That is compression. That's what we're talking about when we say compression. When you photograph things from far away and then you zoom in, the longer you zoom, and it also has to do with the relationship of the subject, so the relationship of the photographer to the subject and the subject to the background. So it's a relationship of distances. The more you zoom, the further the subject is from the background, it's going to look compressed. Is the moon really right behind the Empire State Building? No, it's just that the photographer is standing on the Jersey side using a 600 millimeter lens, and essentially compressing that distance. Does that make sense? Was that a decent, or do I need to go back to school and learn how to explain things? It was good? So, one last thing, we have prime and zoom. Everyone know what a prime lens is? It doesn't zoom. Your feet are the zoom. So a prime lens is a 35 millimeter zoom, or excuse me, a 35 millimeter lens, a 50 millimeter lens. There's no zoom, it's just one focal length. Then you have a zoom, variable focal range. That could be a 24 to 70, 50 to 140, all depends on the system. Who remembers hearing that primes are better quality than zooms? I knew there was going to be a couple. That's what I learned too. Throw it out. I hate rules. I hate absolutes. And someone's probably going to go on the internet somewhere, and there's me like teaching with a really bad haircut 15 years ago, telling you that zooms suck and primes are way better quality. So throw that clip out too. We've made such great strides in technology. It did used to be true. The more elements, the more stuff you had going on, yeah, you wanted something that, it's kind of like, do you want a jack of all trades and a master of none, or do you want that lens that's like, it focuses on one focal length, everything is dedicated to that focal length, all your optics are working towards that one focal length. Wide angle lens, this is the easy. This shouldn't be a quiz. Wide angle lens, no. Telephoto. What are we looking at here? Somebody describe this image to me. If you were describing this image as somebody who had their eyes closed. Staircase. What are we looking at? I intentionally chose an image that has lines in it. Wide angle, right? Is this really what that window looks like, that shape? Center of the frame, all right? Your lines are straighter. What happens? See this railing? That railing looks huge, right? The proportions of the railing are bigger, right? Or am I bugging? Pulled out. Do we see what this wide angle lens does? On a wide angle lens, less distortion in the center. Any guys in here work out? Who's a gym? Any gym people? No? You're a gym person? Right? Yeah? If you want to look completely jacked in the group photo, stand on the edge. I've been doing this for like 15 years. Stand on the edge, stick your chest out, put your arm right here. In that distortion, you got like big ass arms. The distortion's on the edges, it pulls it out. Can't speak for what's going to happen to your face, but stay in the middle. If you want to look normal, stand in the middle of the group shot. That's why you always see like the bros. The bros stand on the edge, like the finance bro and like the really too small, like size medium polo on the edge of the frame. It pulls out on the sides. What focal length do we think this is? Or if we're going, let's say wide, standard, telephoto. Standard. Now what tells you that it's standard? Is there distortion? Is it pretty boring in the sense of there's nothing like, you see how on the stairwell, you know, it's kind of like that cool, that larger than, this is just a dingy Lower East Side stairwell. It shouldn't have anything really cool about it. This is just a standard frame, right? So you guys are learning. What about this? Shallow depth of field. Look at the background. Nobody uses the word bokeh anymore. 10, 15 years ago, that was like, man, people couldn't stop saying that damn word, bokeh. Bokeh is like the out of, you know, when you get like the out of focus circles in the background and all that. Bokeh is related to the out of focus area. Now, I will say, because we're on the topic now, certain lenses have different qualities about the out of focus area, the bokeh. And people will debate about it on the internet, which I think is so fun to watch, when it's like, oh, the shape of the bokeh. And now, yes, there's certain systems that have nicer fall off. That's a much better way of saying bokeh. But yes, I mean, shallow depth of field. What does this look like? It looks like he's standing there. It's my little guy before he cut his hair. I just told me yesterday, he's like, I wanted girl's hair. I'm like, I love you with the long hair. He's like, yeah, but I didn't like people saying I was a girl. So, what do you think is causing the out of focus nature of the background here? The f-stop? What else? Telephoto lens, right? We talked about compression, and compression, what does that do? But what was the other thing I mentioned? Distance. Thank you, you get the gold star. Distance. Where's the background? Do you think I purposely maybe put him in an area where there's nothing right behind him? Cheat code right there. If you want to separate your subject, don't put them right in front of the edge of the TV. Even move up here. Now, shallower depth of field. Trick for an iPhone. If someone hands you a picture, you want to be that person that, although you probably don't want to be the person that they always give the phone to take pictures of them. Move back and zoom it in. You should never take, if you give me your phone to take a picture, that's a pro move. Pro move is, all right, I'm gonna move back here, and then they look at you like you're about to run. I do this all the time. Be on vacation, like in Vegas. They'll be, excuse me, you can take a picture? I'm like, yeah. And they're standing right there, and I'm just like, hey, wait. I'm like, hold on. Chill out. I know what I'm doing. I'm not gonna, and they're still, and you get in the picture, and they're like looking like, do I gotta run? Compression. Even with computational photography, it's still the physics of distance. Distance, you know, for those, my note takers, write down distance. Distance is so key to what's, you know, how much is in focus. It probably matters in a lot of circumstances. It matters just as much as your f-stop, just as much as having a shallow depth of field. Where's my Yankee fans at? Yeah, I had to throw, what's that? There we go. I had to throw a picture in there of Soto looking at a strike just because he left us for the Mets. What kind of lens was this taken with? You're lying. I was on third base when I took this. Took this with a wide, no, I'm joking. I was in the left field seats. Telephoto lens. Zoomed in. Are these people perfect compression? We got like stunt Derek Jeter here. He looks like he ate Derek Jeter. Like he's like bloated, got stung by a bee. Are these people really right there? The umpire's really right there, but he even looks closer, right? Does Aaron Judge look like he's right behind Soto? Who's been to Yankee Stadium? How far is that? It's good, 25 feet, easily. Does that look like 25 feet? That's what I'm talking about, compression. Go on the internet and get in a compression argument with some random who has never touched grass, and they'll love, and then just start telling them that it's because of the telephoto lens, and then they're going to start arguing with you. It's the distance that's creating that. I'm far away, I'm zooming in. Now, if I were closer, if I were standing on third base, and I took a picture of Soto with a zoom lens, and say there was an extra 100 feet between the crowd, what would that look like? Why is the crowd so in focus? Because you're like, oh, well, Mr. Educator guy, you're telling us about distance, and you zoomed in, and compression, but they're all in focus too. Distance. What is the most important distance in that equation? Anybody? Bueller? Boom, right there. I'm here, and let's think on a timeline, ratio. I'm here, my subject's here, the crowd is here. Small distance between the subject and the background, large distance from me to the subject. Take a minute, let that sink in. Is anybody confused, like really, really, really badly? I was always that person, don't be shy, that like went through all 5 years of college afraid to be like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, so I was just like, yeah, cool, everything's all right. All right, I'll retake the class next year. That's the aha, that's what makes it click. We had a hand back here.
Well, I had a question about the picture with the glass, the standard lens.
All right. So let's go back. Okay, in terms of depth of field. Yeah, exactly. Depending on, so this is wide. What's the one thing you can't do on a wide? Your distance, it doesn't really matter, right? Are you changing, when I'm shooting a wide photo of the class, so let's use the class for example. We're gonna have 1, 2, and you're gonna be 3. Take a wide photo. Like we said, I'm not changing the distance at all. Okay, I throw on a standard. So my wide field of view, the picture shows all of this. Standard shows about like that, right? So a little bit more zoom on there, and without me moving at all. A little bit more zoom. So the field of view is gonna act like I'm closer. It's gonna be slightly shallower depth of field, like here. But, see, like here, it's kind of out of focus, but that's where your f-stop is accounting for. It's keeping it more or less in focus. Where is it really going to make the difference is all around here, right? If I shot this zoomed in and a shallower depth of field, or like a medium format with a really shallow depth of field, she might be in focus and the backside of the car you'd see fall off already there. So that's a pretty rich depth of field, right? How wide is that car? That car is probably a good 5.5 feet wide at least. And that's pretty much in focus right there. These poles, and if you really came up here and looked from further away, it looks more in focus than it is. If you got up close, you'd see, you can't really see detail in there. But that is due to the aperture and also a standard lens. There's not that much zoom. There's not that much compression. It's more on the wider end of things. Same shot, wide angle lens. Now, if I framed it, because same shot, wide angle lens, I'd have way more in my scene. It would look way more in focus. If I say if I shot that with like a 18 or 16 millimeter, let's say, if I were to fill the frame the same way, I'd have way more distortion. If I were to fill this frame like this, everything would be. And I had a picture of a car taken like that, and I was going to throw it in, and I'm like, nah, let me not. But the sides of the car would be bowed out, right? Remember, finance bro on the edge of the frame. Arms look big. The fender and the quarter panel and the bumpers would be pulled out of proportion. So you're incorporating distortion as well, which that's a very important thing. I hope you guys are starting to see why photography is so complicated. And it kind of helps you develop an appreciation for what you have to learn and all the things that you have to process. Because that's something that when we get to, further down the line in this series and talking about composition, you ever look down and you see, wow, that scene looks so cool. And you don't have a zoom lens, so you can't take it. You're like, but I got to walk let me walk another 10 blocks. And you walk 10 blocks and what happened? It's not the same scene. You moved position, so the scene completely changed. So I don't know if that kind of translates, but proximity, distance to your subject distance to the background, aperture, focal length. It's this big melting pot of things that are all going to play together. Sensors. This is kind of where we were heading earlier. So we have our point and shoot sensors, smaller sensor. APS-C, do we know what APS-C is? It's what we call a crop sensor. So somebody throw out a random camera body they have. Let's see. Or you said Fujifilm. Which Fujifilm? Do you have X series? X Pro 2, boom. Fujifilm X series is APS-C sensor. So when we talk about sensors, full frame is kind of the standard that everything is measured up against. All right, when we talk about, crop sensor, a crop sensor is smaller than a full frame, right? You have micro four thirds, APS-C, medium large format. A point and shoot with a small sensor, it is the size of the sensor that doesn't allow that rich depth of field. Why can you not get that same depth of field when we talk about that shallow depth of field? And does anybody not understand when I say shallow depth of field? We know what I'm talking about, right? Right? That where something's in focus and the background is immediately out of focus. It's harder to achieve with a really small sensor. If you have a really small 1-inch sensor, everything's going to be more in focus. So again, going back to our previous conversation, what is this? Great, another thing I got to factor into that whole equation, because now I got to figure, okay, well now if I can just keep everything in focus by shooting like that. When we photograph with an iPhone, right? A phone, smaller sensor. You ever take a picture with an iPhone and it's like everything's in focus? It's like infinity focus. From the front of the frame to the back of the frame, it's all in focus. It's because of the sensor size. That's why. Obviously, limited low light performance has more digital noise at high ISO. A larger sensor, it's going to handle high ISO better. It's going to handle noise better. It's going to be better in low light. But we want compact cameras. You can only make the sensor size so big, so it's a purpose. There's a time and place for a larger sensor, and for phones and for point and shoot cameras, you physically can't fit a larger sensor into that body and still keep the body small. There's only so much you can do. Lower dynamic range. So again, when it comes down to quality, do we know what dynamic range is? Anybody not know what dynamic range is? Okay, dynamic range, the ability to hold detail in your shadows and your highlights. So if we think, we'll go back to my, my range here. So, right? Large dynamic range, we ever see a color scale? Who pulls up like editing software? Remember back in the day when you had like early desktop computers and you went to choose like a background color and you had what, like 8 choices? And now when you go on and it's like 47 billion different colors, dynamic range. Now, include shadows and highlights, dynamic range. You ever take a photo and you're able to go into the highlights? Who shoots in RAW? Do we shoot in RAW? When you shoot in RAW, a lot of reasons why we shoot in RAW, so we can recover information into the highlights and into the shadows. If we don't have really great dynamic range, guess what? There's no information to recover. So the smaller sensor, you don't have the dynamic range like you do when I go in and I take a photo on the medium format camera, and I can take a frame that's completely dark and go in and pull the shadows back and make a half-decent exposure out of it. APS-C, so you have a crop factor. So when they say crop factor, what does that mean? It's based off the size of a full frame sensor. So what does 1.5 times and 1.6 times mean? It means that if I have a lens, so say I have a 20 millimeter lens, and I have a 1.5 times crop factor, right? What's 20 times 1.5? Where's my math majors at? 30. That 20 millimeter lens, when you look through it, it gives you the field of view of a 30 millimeter lens. So anybody ever hear the term 35 millimeter equivalent? Or when you see lenses and it's for crop sensors, it's equivalent? That's what that means. If on a 35 millimeter camera, say I can see this whole screen. On that same lens, on a crop sensor camera, I can only see this. So it effectively creates like a zoom effect. That's why they say you get a little bit of a boost for like wildlife, sports, and portraits. Does that make sense, or is that confusing? Make sense? So if I had a 50 millimeter lens on a crop sensor body, let's just keep it 1.5, because most of them are either 1.5, 1.6. 50 millimeter, what effective focal range are we looking at? 75, right? So that 50 millimeter lens that I buy for my Canon Rebel, so the Canon Rebels, if you have like a Rebel XSI, XTI, Nikon D8, the D8000, if it's not a full frame, if it's a crop sensor, You buy a 50 millimeter lens, you don't have a 50 millimeter lens. You have a 50 millimeter lens that is giving you the equivalent field of view of a 75 millimeter lens, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Great question. Great question. It is going to behave more like a 75. It is going to behave a little bit more like a 75. Now, I'm sure it's possible that somebody's out there like, no, wrong, wrong, wrong. But from what I've seen, and the mathematics could state otherwise, you are getting that extra reach. You're getting that extra reach. It may not be much. 1.5 isn't a lot. It's not enough to make. It's more. The difference is more in how zoomed in it is. But I know you're talking in terms of all the other effects that we talked about as terms of compression. What's that? Is there a negative? Great question. Great question. There used to be. And there used to be a perceived negative. A lot of people used to say it was inferior. I know 100 Fujifilm photographers that do really, really, really high-end weddings, and they'll pair a GFX system, which is a medium format, with an X100 or an XT4 or XT3 or XH2S, which are all APS-C sensors. APS-C sensors used to get a bad rap, and a lot of it comes down to the physics of it. It's smaller sensor, so physically you're not getting the same pixel depth, you're not getting the same information, it's not handling low light as well. That used to be all the knocks. The technology now is so great that you can have an APS-C sensor, and I'm going to show you some images from APS-C cameras, and I'll let you be the judge on how the quality is, shooting even with high ISO and low light. So what makes it a positive? Let's flip that. Smaller system, less expensive. No, a bridge camera is, remember, a bridge is still going to be a point and shoot, so it's a type of point and shoot. So a bridge camera is going to have a smaller sensor. So an APS-C, what makes it so attractive is it's not as expensive, it's not as large in a lot of cases, so you're getting a smaller system, a more cost-effective system, and now they've really narrowed the gap in terms of quality and performance. So it's a great question. See, good and low light, moderate ISO noise control, that's obviously improved a lot over the years. Broad lens options. So now there's a whole lot out there in terms of the lens market. Micro Four Thirds. Anybody shoot Micro Four Thirds? All right, so 2 people. What do you guys like about the system? Very light. Very light. Inexpensive lenses. Lucky, stop looking at my screen. Very light, lots of inexpensive lenses. Is there anything? Super portable. What do you guys photograph? Like, what type of wildlife, sports? Wildlife. I was going to say, one of you guys, I got 90% chance one of you guys shoots wildlife. And why is it such a good wildlife camera? Why do a lot of people go towards like the OM systems for wildlife? Battery lasts longer too. Slightly more depth of field. Smaller sensor. So this is more of a balance between getting a smaller sensor but getting more out of it. So for the people who want, remember, smaller sensor, inherently more depth of field, right? Sensors are sold separately. No, I'm joking. You know, the sensor is in your camera. That's what the light is hitting that is transmitting the information. No. These are in the camera. This is basically the driving force behind the inside of your camera. A mirrorless camera doesn't have a mirror. Everything has a sensor. That's where the light. So that you'll look it up. When you look up a camera, when you go up here, they're going to tell you, or you ask them, what kind of sensor? Because it is important. You should know, and you should make an informed decision. Smaller. You guys said smaller. So everything up here, right? It's compact. A Micro Four Thirds system is like somebody who wants that balance of that rich depth of field, but they don't want to point and shoot. They want something that's going to give that rich depth of field with way higher quality and a real portable system because they don't want to carry around a huge Nikon D800. It's a much more portable system. It's a nice little balance. Micro Four Thirds is a very niche system. Do you agree? Very, very niche.
And biggest difference also, point and shoot, you've got whatever lens is on it,
Interchangeable lenses, exactly. You have the benefit of being able to interchange your lenses. The Micro Four Thirds comes down to the mathematics of how it's developed. To be honest, I don't. That's one area I won't dive into because I don't know too much about the Micro Four Thirds system. To be honest, I know enough to know what it is, but as far as why it's the Micro Four Thirds, I know it has to come down to the measurement of the sensor, the system in some regard. That's a great question, though. I'm going to look that up because I don't even know why they call it a Micro Four Thirds system. Now everyone's back there like, shit, can I trust anything? If you what?
If you're traveling like in Alaska or someplace, your lens is so
So, travel. You're saying if I have a smaller sensor camera. Well, no, for an APS-C, it's actually quite it's the opposite. So for an APS-C, you're getting extra reach. So the image that I took, yeah, and that's one of the benefits of APS-C is the image that I took at the Yankees game was on a 70-300 lens. What's 300 times 1.5? 450. So now I get 450 millimeter lens, the reach of a 450 millimeter lens in a 300 millimeter lens body. So that's another benefit of the APS-C. So full frame has always been considered the standard. Back in 35 millimeter days, it was like, okay, you had 35 millimeter, full frame is it. Your DSLRs, your SLRs, larger sensor, better image quality. You're handling more light per pixel, so on the larger sensor, you're getting less noise. It's handling low light performance better. The larger your sensor is, it's inherently going to handle those situations better. And this is where you start to get in when people say, well, why one system versus another? It's not that the other ones are bad, it's that it just gets better the larger the sensor is in certain regards. One of them being low light performance. We want a camera that can handle low light, a camera that isn't going to give high noise. Because that used to be a big problem in the DSLR days was you can go high ISO and it was like, okay, I can get the picture, but there's a ton of grain in it. There's a ton of noise. Shallower depth of field, better background separation. The next one, we're going to go into medium and large format, but the larger the sensor, remember how I said the smaller sensors, you can't get that depth of field? The larger the sensor, the better separation you get. And when I say separation, it's that shallower depth of field. The dynamic range, much better in your highlights and your shadows. And of course, it's more expensive, it's bigger, it's heavier. That, of course, is even changing because you're starting to see full frame cameras in lighter bodies, which is a great thing. And even larger than full frame. Fujifilm just came out with the GFX 100 RF, which is a medium format fixed lens that's not that big of a body, which is our final sensor type, medium large format. Even larger sensor. So basically take full frame and you magnify it some. The one thing that does stand out here is there's a distinctive medium format look. Has anybody ever heard of the medium format look? It's just has a certain quality to it. And it's because the sensor is way larger. In large format, it's even more accentuated. When you look at these old giant, we know what we're talking about, large format cameras from a lot of the ones that you see early 1900s, they shot on these large format cameras. You had Ansel Adams, and it's like these images just have an otherworldly look. It almost is like a three-dimensional look. And that's due the larger sensor plane allows for that distinctive look. I can shoot, going back to our conversation on the wider angle lens on a medium format. I can shoot on a wider angle lens and it's going to have a shallower depth of field than on a smaller sensor camera, which kind of gives it that look. If I shot a wide angle photo on a medium format, you would see more of a fall off. And it has this certain quality. Has anybody ever heard of the Brennizer effect? So there was a photographer, his last name is Brennizer, and he came out with a hack for having that medium format look. And he would basically pop, 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 pop. He would manually focus on a subject and then just take a bunch of frames. And most of the frames would be out of focus, and he'd stitch it all together, and the subject was in focus, and it had this whole, it looked like a wide-angle photo, but just the subject was in focus and had this shallow depth of field. The reason he did that and created that technique is to mimic the look of medium and large format photography. Does that make sense? The Brennizer, Brennizer. If you look up Brennizer, that probably will pop up, the Brennizer effect. What's that? Yeah, it's literally just it's a parlor trick, but it gives the look of, and that's why people will go for medium format and large format a lot of the time. Yes, it's way better image quality, higher resolution, but a lot of it is it has a distinctive look that you can really, if I'm shooting portraiture, there's a look that I can get out of this camera that I can't get from my APS-C cameras no matter how hard I try using that effect. It can kind of get me there, but who wants to sit there and take 30 images and hope that my subject stands still and then go into Photoshop and stitch them all together? And camera modes. We all know our lovely PSAM dial. So we'll knock scene out of here first because we talked about that earlier. If you have a point and shoot or bridge camera, the picture of the beach, the picture of fireworks, the picture of the person's face, portrait mode. Scene mode, your camera controls the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO based on a desired scene setting. All it's really doing is it's saying, portrait mode, okay, you want to take a picture of a person. We want it to have, the depth of field for a portrait, so it's going to be the shallower depth of field, and the other setting is going to lean into that. Landscape mode, what do you think landscape mode is? Larger F number, right? Shallower aperture, larger depth of field because you want to take a landscape portrait. A landscape photo. Program mode and auto mode are very similar. I'm not going to make the P's for professional joke. They're very similar. Basically, program mode is auto with slightly more control. When you put it in auto mode, it's full auto. Your camera's controlling everything. Again, I hate dealing in absolutes, especially with cameras now. Every system's different. Some systems, auto and program, might afford you a little bit more or a little bit less maneuverability. But basically, auto and program mode are going to be automatic, where your camera is doing most of the work. If you want to have slightly more control, you'll use the P, or in some cameras, it's the green button over auto. The three main settings that you're going to be using: shutter priority, aperture priority, and manual. Okay? Manual full control, that's easy. That is the absolute best way to learn your camera, to learn the exposure triangle, which we're going to go into next, which is the heart of why we're here. Taking in exposure, that's the heart and soul of an image, how an image is created. If you learn in manual, you control everything. You control the aperture, the shutter speed, the ISO. One thing affects the other. A great way to learn is, I call them semi-auto modes, shutter priority and aperture priority. In shutter priority, you're controlling the shutter speed. Why do you think you might want to use shutter priority? Sports? What about sports? Fast moving or slow moving. Shutter priority is simply whenever you want to control motion. So, S mode, motion. If I want to take a picture of a waterfall and I want to have that nice creamy water look, I need to blur the water, right? I have to make sure that the shutter speed is slow, or else the water won't have that blurry effect. I'm going to put it in shutter priority if I'm just learning, set it to a slower shutter speed, and I'm going to let my camera do the rest because maybe I don't understand the relationship between shutter speed, ISO, and aperture right yet. Sports. I know I need I want to freeze the action, right? I have to use a fast shutter speed. I can't put it in auto because maybe my camera isn't going to read my mind and know that I want a fast shutter speed. So I have to set the shutter speed. Let's say I want to set 1/850th of a second. Boom, fast enough to freeze the action. I'm going to use shutter priority. Now I know I'm locking in my shutter speed. My camera's going to take care of the rest. Aperture priority. When do we think we would use that? What do you think that controls? You control the depth of field. Aperture priority would be if I want something and I know that I want a rich, deep depth of field, boom, I set it to f8, let my camera do the rest. Or conversely, if I want to take a portrait and I know I want really, really, really shallow depth of field, I want to take a picture of Lucky right now, and I know that anything else in the frame will be distracting, so I need shallow depth of field. Might go in aperture priority, set my aperture really narrow. So on this 1.7 would be the widest I can go, and I'm going to let my camera do the rest. On these three, program, shutter priority, aperture priority, exposure compensation gives you a little bit more control to use it more like a manual mode. So we know what the exposure compensation button is. On your camera, it's that little plus minus. And what does that do? What does your camera want to do when you take an exposure? It wants to take black and turn it to middle gray, wants to take white, turn it to middle gray. And a lot of it depends on how you have your metering set up. Again, a later class, we're going to discuss metering and all that more in depth. But your exposure compensation is a great way. If you're not ready for full manual, maybe you go to shutter or aperture priority. I shoot it in aperture priority, and I've been shooting professionally for over 20 years. And I shoot almost exclusively in aperture priority. The only time I don't shoot in aperture priority is when I'm using strobes, and I have to set it manually. But this exposure compensation gives me that manual control. This is why we're here. This is the pièce de résistance of what we're talking about today. This is the exposure triangle. This is how you create an image. It is the relationship of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Who knows what aperture is? The opening, the diameter of the lens opening. Aperture is just that. The size of the opening in your lens. All three of these things have a relationship, right? There's a symbiotic relationship between aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. There's also a trade-off. So for each of these, right, the size of the opening in your lens, it controls the amount of light hitting your sensor. I'm going to jump back for a second. Who knows what else it affects? So size of the opening in the lens, it controls the amount of light hitting your sensor. What else does aperture? It's a quiz from earlier. We've been talking about it all day. What else does aperture control? Depth of field. Great job. You guys have been listening. So how much of your image is in focus? It's measured in f-stops, where your f-stop equals focal length over the aperture diameter. And with each full stop, you're either doubling or halving the light. So when you go up, right, so you're stopping up, which means more light. So which way is stopping up? This way or this way? There you go, good. It's confusing. Stopping up is this way. The larger the opening, the lower the F number. And I just threw, it goes up past F22, and it obviously goes wider than F2.8. But I just gave you a little sampling there to show you the size of the opening, right? So the lower the F number, when would you use the lower F number? Give me two scenarios. If it's dark, all right, give me another scenario, can't use that answer. When else would you use a lower F number? You want the background out of focus. So what is the main difference between those two things, right? One of is an aesthetic purpose, right? You want the background out of focus. And one of them was out of necessity. It's dark. You have to. The conditions dictate, right? Now remember that because it'll play in as we go to these other two things. Shutter speed. So he said, why does it affect the color? Okay, it doesn't inherently affect the color. It can affect, and that's more something to do with the optics of the lens. Because it will affect, every lens it's a tool, it's a piece of machinery. Every lens is not created equal. You have glass and prisms in there. So it might appear that it throws things off. So on certain lenses, you ever hear a lens having a sweet spot? Certain lenses have a sweet spot. Everyone says, oh, f8 to f11. Sweet spot because, again, what's happening? You open this up, you're opening it up wide. It might not be as crisp around the edges as it is in the center, right? Now, if I take this is a piece of glass. And the piece of glass is this big. And around the edges of the piece of the glass, because they're further, because it's a nice convex lens, and they're further, and it's blurry around the edge, okay? I have an aperture that covers, right? So when it's wide open, I see the entire piece of glass. What am I going to see? I'm going to see that blurry edge, right? Now, if I close my aperture and it gets smaller, is it changing the size of the glass? What is it doing? It's covering the blurry edge. The glass is still there. Your aperture is just basically like a shutter. Go figure. The blades are covering that blurry edge. So now, boom, if I'm optically really, really, really good in the center, if I'm wide open, I'm going to be exposing the imperfections, and that's why they say, oh, the sweet spot's right there. You know why? Because that's the most optically sound part of this particular lens. That's why they talk about when you see lens performance and why you pay more money for certain lenses and why certain brands and certain, more expensive lenses say, wow, it's across the range, it's optically good. You always hear them talking about edge-to-edge sharpness. That's what they mean. If I'm photographing everything outside, that's why a lot of people are like, well, I'm photographing everything outside. I'm going to be at f8 to f11 anyway. I don't need to worry about edge-to-edge sharpness because I'm always in that range. This is why we don't like to deal in absolutes, or I don't. Good question. So our shutter speed, how long our sensors expose the light? What happens when you push the shutter? Right? It's a curtain, right? No matter what kind of sensor you have, what kind of setup, we have to expose the sensor to light. Now, if I take, and there's a big light shining back here, and I have a big curtain, and I go, boom. A lot of light came in, right? Think of it like a hose. Your aperture is the diameter of the hose. If I have a fire hose and it's like that, and now my shutter speed is how long I open the fire hose. So if I have the fire hose and it's wider diameter and I open it for longer, what's going to happen? More water, a lot more water. Okay? So shutter speed, how it affects motion, right? We talked about that earlier with shutter priority. If I'm opening the shutter, boom, boom, right? Quick flash of light. What might happen? It freezes motion. If I keep it open longer, think of moving water. Anything that's moving. If I take a longer shutter, click, click, of people walking by, guess what's going to happen? Blur. Trick question right here. If I leave my shutter open longer, he's walking right there. I take a picture, I open the shutter, and I move with him, and then the shutter closes. What's going to happen? He stays in focus because the camera's moving with him, and every other thing that's not moving right in line with the camera is going to be blurry. That's how you do panning. That's a drag effect. That's when you said sports too. A lot of times when you see like professional racing, cycling, they use that pan effect. And you'll see, I have an example of that in here. So the smaller the fraction, and we measure the shutter speed in fractions, seconds, minutes, or fractions of seconds and seconds, minutes. The smaller the fraction, the faster the shutter speed, the easier it is to freeze motion. So ISO, the final part of the equation, is how sensitive your sensor is to light. The trade-off, it affects the grain in your image. What is noise? What is grain? You bump it up and the image quality starts to degrade. That's usually where you see images get degraded. It directly relates to the ISO. So on the cameras that we see now, it measures how much your camera amplifies the electrical signal once light hits the sensor. So if we use that same hose analogy, the ISO is going to be if you have a sponge. And say you have a really absorbent sponge, right, that absorbs a lot of water. Do you think that's low ISO or high ISO? High ISO. The higher the ISO number, the more sensitive it is to light, so the more light it absorbs, the more grain. Question? I love where you're going. I love it. Honestly, you're starting to put the pieces together, which is great. It's math. No, and it's a relationship. A very good way to look at ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and this is one of the things that kind of made it hit home for me, is I have 10 pebbles, right? And I have 10 pebbles, and I have 3 different cups. If I put 4 pebbles in here, how many pebbles do I have left over? Right? Or if I have to get to 10, say I have a ton of pebbles, I got to get to 10, I put 4 pebbles in the first cup, right? I have how many more pebbles to put in the other 2 cups? 6, right? And I have to have at least 1, to make an exposure, I have to have at least 1 in each cup, right? So if I have 4 here, and I put 2 here, then guess what? I have to put 4 here. If I have a wide aperture, right? So we want to make an exposure, and we're going to really exaggerate this. We have a giant lens. The aperture is this big. I have a wide aperture, and I'm shining light through it, right? I have a bright sun out there, okay? Wide aperture. How is my ISO going to be? I have a lot of light coming. A big sun, the sun's right over there across the street. I have a giant low ISO. Why?
Because it's smaller the number of low ISO.
Because I have a ton of light,
Ton of light, right?
right? 3 parts of the equation. I have a ton of light. My opening is huge. Remember? Big fire hose. I'm letting more water through, right?
Low ISO.
So low ISO. Now, shutter speed, right? That last part of the equation. So we have our big aperture, right? So a lot of light, big aperture, lower ISO, shutter speed. How is our shutter speed? Quick. We want to only open it for a second. Remember, I got that hose, right? And although we have that non-absorbent sponge right there, because it's a low ISO, big hose, boom, open it real quick. Quick blast of water, right? You have to let light in, and here is really the rub of all of this. How do you balance, right? Each one of these things has something that it affects, and then everything is tethered to the other thing, right? If we look back here, why is there a line drawn? Why is it a triangle? If I pull this in one direction, guess what's coming with it? The other 2. So if I, outside right here, right, lower light, where are we going to start? Is there a right answer or a wrong answer? What do you want the image to be? What image are you capturing, right? Somebody give me a scenario. I'm going to take an image out here, right? What image? What am I going to take? Somebody just throw out something. The bus? Okay. So this is where we ask questions. All right, do I want the bus just sitting there? Or do you want the bus blurry or not? Let's go one at a time, right? We have our subject. So let's go to shutter speed. right? What does our shutter speed control? Motion. What are the two basic factors of motion? Frozen or blurry motion? What do you want? Let's go blurry. Okay. So now that leads us right into shutter speed because we want it blurry. Okay. So what do we want? Slower shutter speed. Okay. So now we know we want a slower shutter speed. So let's start right there. Slower shutter speed. How blurry do you want it? Really blurry? Or do you want it just blurry enough so that we know it's a bus, but we see the motion? 60th of a second is a good point of where motion is, you start to freeze motion. Now, similar to relationship of distances, it depends on the speed of things moving. Do you think, because people say, oh, 60th of a second freezes motion. Do you think that freezes a bullet? No. It might freeze somebody who's just like standing here like this or walking, right? But it's not necessarily going to freeze something that's super fast moving. So this is where you start to ask yourself the questions. How blurry do you want it? Well, the amount of blur dictates the shutter speed. Okay. I really want it blurry. Okay? So now, if I really want it blurry, what do I have to do to the shutter speed? Longer. Now, my hose, right? Let's say half a second. We want it. I like working in even 1 second. I'm leaving my shutter open for 1 second because I want a nice motion drag. I'm opening that hose for 1 second, okay? Do I want to leave that hose fully open? Or do I want to have the hose smaller? Well, there's one other thing we have to consider, right? What kind of sensitivity? Light sensitivity. Where's my ISO at? Because if I do 1 second, and 1 second right now, right, isn't that crazy? If I have my ISO at 100 right now, right, very low sensitivity to light. Did I lose anybody on this? Are you guys generally with me? So we don't have that much light because we're leaving it open. We have to have 1 second. We got to get the blur. And that's where a lot of people, this is kind of like where a lot of people I see get the aha moment. Out of these three things, what is the thing you need, right? Motion, how much motion? Okay, cool. That kind of puts me in the right arena that I need to be in. Not that much light outside. I'm going to go, say I go ISO 100. What's the only thing left in the equation? We got the shutter speed, we got the ISO, the f-stop, right? Now, maybe I say, okay, I'm going to start at f5.6. I want it in focus. I might take an image, and there might be too much light still. There might still be too much light, and I can't go lower in my ISO. What would I do? Now, if I take that picture, ISO 100, f5.6, 1 second exposure, and it's still too bright, what do I have to do? If I raise the ISO, that makes it more sensitive to light. What is going to happen? It's going to be even brighter. If I'm overexposed, I can't change. I can't change my. Well, I can, but I've decided I like that blur. For argument's sake, I've decided I like the blur that 1 second gives it. Because remember, we want a certain look. If I make a shorter shutter speed, what's going to happen? I have less blur. I don't get that effect I want. What is the only other thing and I'm at ISO 100. The aperture. Now, you can put a filter on. I knew somebody's going to be sitting there like, this guy doesn't know anything. We're keeping it I'm talking without bringing in like neutral density filters, and you could put a pair of sunglasses over it and it's going to cut the amount of light going in. I'm talking, this is to kind of help you understand the basics of exposure. If I were to just keep to what we have on the camera, I'd have to change, and assuming I don't have a lower ISO than 100, I would have to stop down to close the aperture down. Does that make sense? I'd have to change the size of the opening to let less light in. Does that make sense? Yes. How that relationship kind of builds. Yeah. Now, really quick example, we won't drag it out. If I were to take a picture of Lucky, right? I want a picture of Lucky here, and I got the nice light I want. What's the same example I used before. Have to have the background blurred behind him. So where are we starting? Out of the three things, where am I starting? Aperture. Gotta have my aperture, has to be shallow. 1.7, boom. 1.7. What kind of aperture is that? Huge. All right? So we got our aperture. It has to be 1.7. We're locking it in. My aperture is huge. What does that mean? More light. So those other two things, right? I got 6 out of those 10 stones in the aperture cup. I got 4 stones. Where do I put them? Do I do 2 and 2? Maybe, right? I can do pretty. Do I need to have a fast shutter speed or a slow shutter speed? My shutter speed doesn't really matter, right? Lucky's just standing there. Do I have to have a particular shutter speed? No. Does my ISO have to be? No. So do we see how we're making the decisions to put things together? I hate giving homework, but if you do want to get better, and I would love to see part of what this 7-point series is, I want to see you work towards. I would love to see progress. I coach baseball. I coach little kids, and one of my favorite things is seeing the progress. Part 7 is going to be a final critique. I want you to start practicing these things and putting them into use. And I would hope that some of you would want to submit some images or come in for, and it could be completely anonymous, you can submit them, but I want to have a final critique of images and see, hey, here's an image I took after watching week 1, and here's where I'm at now over the next couple months. Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is with the ISO, shutter speed, and the aperture, they all work in tandem.
All in tandem.
Okay, now the thing is, okay, I'm very, very, very basic. So I have an iPhone 7 and I have a Canon SX280. Those are the most recent digital cameras. I like to take pictures. The best way for me to learn is to take pictures at different settings like macro, panorama, etc. And then what happens is I don't edit it in Photoshop or whatever, photo elements. I go on the computer, I take the information, and it tells me like an f-stop and everything, and that's the best way to learn.
Yeah. Play around. Play around. You have to. All right. You ready for your big moment? You ready? This is redemption. It's redemption. I got to give you another chance. Come on. I told you at the end I was going to put you to the test. Do you accept the challenge, or do you want to? All right, let's go. The name of the game is Exposure Triangle. All right. I'm asking a lot here. I'm asking a lot. And I basically just threw a Mike Tyson uppercut out of the gate. So this is a tough one. I want the f-stop, the shutter speed, and the ISO. Fred, cue the Jeopardy music. I want numbers. I want the settings. F-stop. Oh, yeah, here, I'll have you stand right over here just so they can see as well. So f-stop, shutter speed, and ISO. To the best of your ability. All right, so nighttime. See, he's piecing it together. It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when they tell you to talk your thoughts out. Yes, talk your thoughts out. What are the things we discussed that would make you... Obviously, there's the blur. Right? How long are the lines? Is it a short line? Long line? Long line, right? Long line, what does that tell you?
I'm thinking of long shutter, so therefore...
No pressure, no pressure.
So I'd say probably lower than 150, definitely lower than 150.
Okay.
Right? But if it's, because there's a difference if it's daytime and nighttime. So the photo is in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, if it's, whether it's daytime
I'll tell you, this was taken in Midtown, during Midtown at night.
at night.
So closer to Times Square at night.
At night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to go range
Okay, 1/20th to 1/40th. All right. Shutter speed. We got ISO.
The ISO, it's not grainy at all. So it's
He's
like,
looking at grain.
I mean, ISO. I want to do aperture first.
Okay, aperture.
Aperture. Alright. It's nighttime, so it's very low, right?
So he's saying low aperture.
You gotta open it up.
So he's saying wide open.
Yeah.
All right.
You gotta have lighting, so it's. I mean, I don't know what kind of lens you have, but it's like 1 point.
1 point something. So we're saying aperture wider than f2.
Definitely.
Okay. Aperture wider than f2. You said shutter speed 1/20th to 1/40th, and now all we have left is
ISO.
ISO.
So ISO. So if your aperture is actually, how low can you get
For ISO,
for aperture? Like, can you go like one? Is there such a thing as 1 to?
okay, on this camera, maybe I should have told you that. I'll give you a clue here since this is a tricky one. I shot at medium format, 63 millimeter equivalent lens with a maximum aperture of f1.7.
F 1.7. All right, fine. So I'll go.
f1.7, 1/20th to 1/40th of a second at what ISO? And my minimum ISO on that camera is 40. 40.
I'd go ISO 200.
ISO 200. All right. Have a seat. Thank you. How did he do? Yeah, clap it up. There you go. That takes a lot to stand up here. How did he do? Think he did pretty good? I told you I had to throw out here like, man, I'm gonna hit him out of the gate. Punch him in the mouth. I totally set whoever was gonna stand up here was being set up. Because I hate absolutes, and I just took everything that you guys just learned and turned it on its head. For a reason. Sometimes you gotta learn F16. F16, right? You can't see it's F16. Why? Because I'm panning. E-bike. When have you ever seen an e-bike? Half a second. All right? This is the other part of the trick. This is kind of fun, man. Like sadistic. Like why did, right? E-bike, which means he's flying by. Which means I don't need a longer shutter speed to get a long drag. You would think long drag because why? Look at this line. Yeah. But not if you pan. And how do you pan? You match the speed of the camera with the speed of the rider, the speed of the person in motion. That's why. ISO, you know why you couldn't see grain at ISO 2500? Because damn it, I don't have an $8,000 camera to see grain at ISO 2500. No, it's a medium format camera. Larger sensor, it handles the ISO better. All right, next up, who wants to come up? Who wants to take a try at it? I'm not showing you what picture it is. You don't know what you're gonna get. Might be easy, might be not. Anybody want to come up? All right. All right, Fred, cue the music.
Can I get that picture one last time?
What's that?
The stats on that picture.
Oh, yeah. Turn your brain off. Don't think about it now. Think about that picture you just saw. You have extra time to process. All right, ready?
Okay, so this is, it's a very high ISO, at least 1,000.
Okay, very high ISO, at least 1,000.
And the aperture, okay, it's tiny aperture.
Okay.
And the f-stop,
So how tiny? We talking like f22 or?
go f22 at least.
Okay, we'll say f22.
Yeah, because a tiny aperture. Okay.
All right, high ISO. You said 1,000, which isn't high. High ISO.
How about 2,000? I'll go 2,000.
I shoot 10,000 all the time.
Okay. Okay, so what's the next? We did the f-stop.
Shutter speed.
The shutter speed is quick shutter
Quick
speed.
shutter speed. How quick? Throw a random fraction out.
Oh, 1/100th of a second.
1/100th of a second.
Yeah, I'm just
All right. How did she do?
probably not too good. This is the only way I'm going to learn. 'Cause
Do we think she did all right? All right. Well, let's clap it up. Thank you for coming up, being brave soul. F8, 1/450th of a second. So, if you would have not put numbers out, if you would have just said high ISO, quick shutter speed, because your high ISO that you said wasn't that high, so you should have stuck on high ISO. You said quick shutter speed, 100th of a second isn't that quick. You would have been 2 for 2 right there. Those numbers, that's why we're here. That's why they play the game. And you said smaller aperture, right? F8, smaller, middle of the range, but, right? It's enough. Distance. I mean, I wasn't standing next to the thing, but, right? It teaches you something about, again, I strategically chose these images to make it a learning experience. Some of it is going to break your brain, and some of it will patch up what has been broken and rewire it to see things in a different way.
Did you use 4/50th of a second because you didn't want camera shake, because you were using a telephoto, which would shake in the wind or whatever, so you could get away with F8 and 4,000, yeah, 4,000, but you had to have a high
Mhm.
shutter speed.
What object are we standing on?
You're looking at a 400 or
We're standing on a giant spinning rock,
yeah.
taking a picture of another spinning rock. So, partly right, yes. That's 280,000 miles away, exactly. So, part of it was, yes, that camera shake, especially with a longer lens. A longer lens, you inherently have more camera shake, faster shutter speed for that reason, and because I wanted it as crisp as possible. This was not on a tripod. I hate tripods. I'm handheld. If it was on a tripod, would it change my settings? No. I like a faster. Again, because what did I just mention? We're on a spinning rock, taking a photo of another spinning rock. Even if I put a tripod on a spinning rock, guess what? It's a stable camera that's still on a spinning rock. So the key thing here, the one thing that I can change, that I can't stop the Earth. God knows what would happen. Would we fly off, or who knows what? Gravity would cease to exist. But I can control how long my shutter's open, and I still can't control freezing the motion. So I can't control the circumstance, but I can control the motion. That's why when you see those pictures of star trails, you ever see the picture of star trails and it looks like a giant spiral in the sky? Very long exposures. If I take a star, which is a dot, right, for all intents and purposes, and I drag my shutter, and the Earth moves in a circular fashion, what happens? You create circular star trails. This line is a single piece of light that's just drawn out, like when you take a mozzarella stick and break it open.
I have a question. How come that had the guy on the e-bike had a higher F value than this?
How come the e-bike had a higher F? Ah.
Right, because it was a little bit more light in the picture than the moon.
So the moon wasn't completely filling my frame, so it wasn't that much light because it wasn't really filling the frame. A ton of light here. I had a ton of light here, so that's why. Because the moon, if I were zoomed in on it, yes, all that light would be filling my frame, but it wasn't really filling the frame up. That moonshot was cropped in a little too. All right. Almost done. All right, peanut gallery. What are we thinking on this one? Read the shadows. Where are the shadows? Where's the shadow pointing? The long shadows or no? Right? I'm going to help you out. I'm the teacher's assistant right now. The TA is going to help you cheat on the test. Shadows right under the leg, right? So where's the sun? directly overhead. So what does that mean? Broad daylight. There's a rule, right? Broad daylight, it's the brightest point. What am I going to have? I'm going to have my ISOs, or my f-stop's going to be where? Am I going to be shooting this wide open? Somebody said 16, right? 8 to 16, the sunny 16 rule. Although I never usually, I know myself. I'm going to tell you this was f8, 2,000th of a second, ISO 100. Let's see how well I know myself. All right, 8/800th of a second. But again, you see where we're going with it, right? Broad daylight, low ISO. I want to freeze the motion, and I want everything reasonably deep as far as depth of field is concerned. We're almost there. Thank you guys for hanging with me. High shutter speed. What tells you that it's high shutter speed? I froze. What are two things that are frozen here other than him as a whole? Is there blur on him? Look at the shoelaces, the ball. There's absolutely no motion blur on the ball. And what are these little dots? Snow. And it's frozen. It's not blurry, because if it wasn't frozen, what would the snow look like? Trails. F4, right? 4,000th of a second, ISO 640. Final one. Does anybody want to be a brave soul on our final quiz here? All right, this is a trick. It looks like it's really shallow depth of field, right? But what did your sneaky teacher do? He zoomed in. I put a 70 to 200 on, slapped it at f4 to make it look like it's f1.4, and tried to trick the class. Thank you guys for coming out.